Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another PhocusWire webinar. Here we are, December the 8th, 2020. My name's Kevin May and I'm the Editor-in-Chief at PhocusWire. This particular webinar is brought to us with our friends at WNS. A very big thank you from PhocusWire to them for working with us and collaborating with us on this particular webinar, which goes under the title of Transforming Travel for the New Normal. Now, to set the scene before we get into today's webinar, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way travelers are approaching any journey. Fear of infection and travel restrictions are holding travelers back from traveling to their dream destinations, as we all know. Travel is no longer what it used to be. However, travelers' expectations are not taking a hit. In fact, their expectations are rising to a whole new level. Today, travelers want to be in complete control and prefer last-minute bookings via digital channels for shorter durations and distances. To fulfill this requirement, travel sector employees need to be empowered with the right tech and skills to provide an empathetic omni-channel experience. Intelligent interpretation of traveler behavior will help travel companies in tailoring the right experiences, I beg your pardon. AI, machine learning open up new opportunities for travel companies and are paving the way for contactless applications for activities such as booking, onboarding, check-ins, security protocols, smart recommendations and notifications spanning the entire traveler journey. An agile, integrated and empathetic approach across journey touchpoints is critical to instill a sense of confidence within the stakeholder community, both internal and external. This presents an opportunity for travel businesses to reinvent the innovative operating models and new metrics for success. Right, so that's the kind of introduction. Over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, you're going to learn how to elevate customer intimacy, rebuild traveler trust, and boost your bookings. Get some ideas on how to maximize return on investment for digital solutions, how to leverage flexible work and agile delivery models to meet unpredictable demand, which we all know that's the kind of world that we are living in, as we know, and how to arrest churn and deliver real-time personalized traveler experience. Right, so those are going to be your takeaways. As always, with our PhocusWire webinars, everything that you see in here, including the Q&A, which I'll come to in a moment, at the end will be recorded and you'll be sent a link to that recording as a replay that you can watch at your own leisure if you have to dip out at any point over the course of the next 45 minutes, or indeed if you want to pass it on to anybody that was unable to attend today. As I said just a moment ago, we do have about 5 or 10 minutes at the end set aside for anybody that has questions from our audience. All our guests today have agreed to take your questions, so that's always great. So if you have any questions, please send them in to us over the course of the webinar by hitting the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of your dashboard on Zoom here today. So please do so via the Q&A button rather than the chat function, if you please. So that's enough on the replay elements. If we can go to the next slide. As I said, I'm Kevin May. I'm the Editor-in-Chief at PhocusWire. All our guests are going to be firing up their videos as we speak, almost simultaneously, which is great. So from left to right on the screen, as you see it, is Dean Mullane. He's the Director for Global Finance Transformation at Hotelbeds. He's in Ireland today. Welcome, Dean. Next to him is Ash Jokhoo. He's the Chief Data and Information Officer at Virgin Atlantic. He's at their testing centre in Crawley, near Gatwick Airport, for those of you that don't know where Crawley is, also in the UK. And last but no means least is Robert Bailey. He's the Corporate Senior Vice President and Practice Lead for the Travel and Leisure Practice in EMEA for WNS Global Services. So a very warm welcome to our guests. You'll be hearing from all of those in a moment. But sometimes we do this. We're definitely doing it today. We're going to get an audience poll. So we want to take the temperature of everybody that's here today. So if we can have our poll come up in front of you. Right. I'm not quite sure which way this one's going to go, but when do you believe the travel industry will fully, emphasis on the word fully, recover? And you've got a couple of options there. So as soon as a vaccine is available, 2024, we're working backwards, as you can see here, 2023 or 2022. Now, today is, I guess we could say, a bit of a landmark day. Just we'll talk here while people are voting. At about 6:40 this morning here in the UK, the UK's first vaccine was administered from the Pfizer vaccine. So it's made lots of headlines here this morning, as you might imagine. A very dear-looking 90-year-old lady in an NHS hospital in the West Country was given the first vaccine for the coronavirus. So here are our results. 2023 for 38% of you, 2022 for a quarter, just over a quarter said 2024, and just 7% of you said as soon as a vaccine is available. I would say rather pessimistically, perhaps 2023, but I would have gone for 2022. Interestingly, that we didn't have 2021 as an option there, but yeah. So our audience, our audience is saying 2023. So thank you very much, everybody, for sharing your estimates on when we think travel industry is fully going to recover. So luckily for all the audience, that's the last you're going to hear from me for about the next 35 minutes. I'm delighted now to hand over to Robert Bailey. As I said, he's the Corporate Senior Vice President and Practice Lead for the Travel and Leisure Practice in EMEA for WNS Global Services. So Robert, we're looking forward to hearing you, and then Dean, and then Ash, what you've got to say. I'll be back at the end for the Q&A. Just a quick reminder again, if you have any questions for our panel, that's Dean, Ash, and Robert, who you're about to hear from, hit the Q&A button. They'll be delighted to take any questions. So that's enough from me. Robert, over to you, sir.
Okay, hello, and thanks for the introduction, Kevin. Delighted to be here as we approach the end of perhaps the most challenging year in the history of travel industry. And I want to take time just to wish you, your families, colleagues, all the very best in this period, and stay safe as we move forward. We hear a lot of facts and figures these days, so I wanted to use a few of those to set the scene for the sessions today, because they highlight some of the challenges that we face, but also some of the opportunities that the travel industry faces today. I think one of the most notable things about the COVID pandemic was how rapid and coordinated the global nature of it was in the shutdown of travel, both internationally but also domestically. And unlike previous crises such as SARS or volcanic ash clouds, food scares, geopolitical tensions, this pandemic's impacted the entire global industry at the same time, and it's eliminated the hedging of redeploying capacity or redirecting trips and alternative means to operate to hedge the impact of the downturn. And the other side is both the supply side and the demand side of businesses were halted at the same time. So when you look at stats, the UNTO has stated that we're looking like a 70% decline in tourism worldwide this year, and losses running to around 800 billion. IATA estimates that the member airlines are going to lose about 118, 120 billion in 2020. So it's all a bit grim. So what are the options? I think one of the things critical, we all have to work together to rebuild trust and confidence throughout our industry and the travelers, and to get travelers and potential travelers to return. And so can I have the next slide, please? I think we need to consider the fact that travelers' expectations have certainly evolved significantly over this COVID period. I think pre-COVID, travelers were already seeking simplification of their travel experience. They're looking for easy, comprehensive access to information, both online, mobile. They're looking for simple, personalized, relevant offers consistent with their needs and expectations. And there were many digital tools, processes, and such like being offered. But I think it's fair to say many were point solutions and lacked a coherent integration for the end-to-end journey. And I'd say as we progress through the COVID time, the travelers' expectations have really changed rapidly and quite significantly. They're now focusing on health and safety, and obviously health and safety of both travelers and the personnel involved in the operation, delivery, consumption of travel and hospitality in general are impacted. So managing in this environment with reduced volumes of travellers, but also fewer staff, has raised some new challenges for businesses, but it's also driven adoption of new technologies, forced changes to processes and service delivery. And, you know, ironically, we've kind of turbocharged digitization in many senses through absolute necessity. I think in the process, customer experience interactions have also had to change. The pandemic's kind of changed the age of the customer into the age of empathy. So customer centric, you also got to have the empathy for the customers. And for many businesses, you know, infusing a level of emotional connection with their communication and interactions is new. But it's fast becoming a business imperative as a way to ensure customers facing uncertainty, either economic, health, or on trust grounds, are fully engaged. And I think this is something we'll be focusing on. And I think you'll hear more about this from later presenters in this session. One thing that's true coming out of COVID, digital is a driving force for the post-COVID world. And I think it's contributed to solving many of the practical challenges that we faced. And we're seeing innovative solutions that leverage contactless tools, technology linked with data, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So to create predictive models, minimize queuing in the travel process, streamline overall travel experience, and these things offer quite a lot of potential. One of the side effects of the reduction in travel has been actually a positive one, I think, for many people. It's the ecological recovery of many sensitive tourist attractions and destinations. So again, many travelers now are demanding better transparency and more action to continue to minimize the impact of travel and tourism on the environment. And I think we need to be thinking in a more sustainable way in the new normal. Can I have the next slide, please? So whatever your business and wherever your markets or regions lie, we can all agree it's critical to reignite demand in order to kickstart our business recovery in travel and hospitality. Much of it's going to be dependent on government and regulatory environments initially. You know, they need to open in a coordinated fashion with appropriate support for international travel without too many restrictions such as quarantine or mobility. You know, it's got to be much more, let's say, coordinated and free. The availability of a vaccine, as we said in the first, we saw in the poll, is part of the story. It's not the story. And I think that poll highlighted very clearly that it's a step along the road. I think health and safety are measures underpinning the rebuilding of traveller trust, and also businesses and business traveller confidence is necessary to return to higher volumes. I think there's one thing we've noted, there's significant pent-up demand in the industry. And in Europe in particular, when we saw the opening up of markets post the first wave, there were massive spikes in demand at very short notice, with, you know, certain routes showing 500% plus increase in demand at short notice. And this is raising a few other challenges. The need to match supply potential with potentially wild fluctuations in demand, whilst maintaining this trust and health and safety of the travellers and staff in the process. And I think companies need to be more lean and agile in their operating models and take advantage of partnerships and flexible resource models in a different way to allow their operations to scale rapidly up or down to respond to this changed environment. And this is somewhere where WNS's core domain knowledge and expertise has played out quite strongly in co-creation of service offerings, supporting businesses to respond effectively, appropriate scale and quality. Coming out of the crisis, I think these capabilities will build up and leverage digital and remote delivery models. They'll ensure stronger operational resilience as well as simplifying the customer interaction. I'm going to touch on a few of these in the next slide. Next slide, please. So the levers here, there are several levers we can look at, but they're broadly split into those that relate to process, those that relate to the people, and those that relate to technology, data, or digital, I guess is a simple way of putting it. One of the areas I think will have a dramatic impact is a rapidly emerging model of open talent. It's alternative talent models. Why is that? I think it's been the structural changes that have been forced upon industries by the pandemic and the severity of the impact on the travel industry in particular. It's catalyzed these kind of new working models, remote working, home working, and so forth. And the ability to engage and decouple workers in an agile way to cope with rapid changes in demand has been turbocharged. And we've seen new entities or platforms emerge to facilitate engagement and deployment of gig workers and knowledge workers in a whole new way. So again, this is quite an exciting area. And combined with knowledge management and centers of excellence and service providers like WNS, it's opened up a whole new opportunity for growth and to improve cost efficiencies, to improve quality, to reduce time to market for companies coming back online. Another area is the collection and use of data, and data as a fuel, such as to fuel advanced analytics, and also as the raw material for robotic process automation. We hear a lot about this through novel technologies. And again, these need to be supported by domain expertise. And I call out a couple of examples here. You see examples in industries across many processes. But I'm going to call out two that we've been involved in at WNS. One is in the air cargo space, and another one in the finance and accounting space. So both of them drawing on a number of attributes. Air cargo is it's a complex business with many paper-based legacy processes, and there's a lot of manual intervention still required. It's also been at the forefront during COVID because of obviously the downturn in passenger traffic. To address this and help clients improve their efficiency, quality, and agility, we developed a sort of new solution set called ACOS, and it works with the vast amounts of data that come out of the cargo systems. It uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to simplify the processes, improve efficiency through integration of intelligent document scanning tools, predictive modeling, process automation, and the like. And it gives significant economic benefits. For example, it can reduce 60 to 80% of the processing or turnaround times for a business. And you know, we're finding about 20% of manual processes can be taken out through automation. Second area I call out is in the finance and accounting. This again using cognitive automation and analytics to offer a kind of a digital one office suite for the CFO. And effectively it's an end-to-end set of solutions which leverage data, analytics, intelligent automation that enhances the process from order, fulfillment, billing, and receivable. So an end-to-end look for a business. It's effectively reducing the number of touch points. It allows seamless interactions. It then it releases working capital for the business, minimizes revenue leakage, and accelerates revenue recovery. And all of these together help reduce the cost of the total cost of ownership for a business. And as a side effect, it improves customer experience and obviously retention. Pardon me. And to give you a flavor of the benefits coming out of this, we've seen with one client, an insurance client, we saw 20% reduction in cash on account, which this order of magnitude about $40 million in this case. And another media client reduces bad debts by over 11%. Again, this is quite large sums of money when you add them up. Can I have the next slide, please? On this, WNS is moving forward into the digital and human assistance. WNS has developed an Experience suite, which is a digitally integrated customer service model, integrating human design, human assisted design elements and flexible working with digitization. So it's effectively allowing better business outcomes and at the same time building customer trust. It's effectively smart automation again, using advanced analytics and artificial intelligence to integrate with an agile workforce. I mentioned the open talent model and gig economy, and businesses can understand customers' behavior better in real time and then adapt to it in a more immersive experience across whichever channel the customer chooses. And also this can be done at pace. I mean, I find this a very exciting thing because it's effectively, it's taking the traditional limits to scaling away and allowing businesses to grow with customer intimacy and scale their operations rapidly. To date, WNS has embarked on a number of co-creation journeys in this space. I'd say some of the findings have been pretty impressive, with benefits of up to 50% reduction in total cost of ownership on legacy models and some 10 to 15% boosting of bookings and the ability to upsell and cross-sell while you have the client in the engaged model. I mean, it's still early, but dramatic improvements are real as we exit this most severe crisis in living memory. I think on that positive note, I'd like to hand over to Dean from Hotelbeds to continue this journey. Dean.
Thanks, Robert. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I know I was having some connection issues earlier on. So if we could just move to the next slide, please. And we can move past this one as well. I'm just going to start with a very short introduction to Hotelbeds. We are a hotel distribution company, effectively. We're a technology company. We're privately held, private equity held. We're around since early 2000. And just going back to some of the comments Robert made about demand and supply, on the bottom half, you can see how we interact with the demand side of the equation through travel agents, whether they're online or more traditional, retail, airlines, loyalty programs, and we have about 60,000 clients there. And on the supply side, we have the relationships with hotels. We support transfers, a lot of activities that you can do depending on where you're staying, and obviously things like car rentals. So given, as Robert outlined, the impact of the COVID-19, our business has been dramatically impacted because on the one hand, the demand dried up as people were either unable or unwilling to travel. And then on the hotel side in particular, they weren't able to open or function to the same capacity that they would have been used to in the past. So it was interesting when we think about the first poll that we put up on the screen when Kevin put it up at the start, and it asked a question around when do we expect business to fully recover? And I guess it's an interesting question because the question is fully recover to what? Okay, one of our reflections would be, the business that we've had in the past may be very different to the business that we will have now into the future. So what this full recovery looks like is probably open to interpretation. If we could move to the next slide, please, and just talk a little bit about, as we now reflect on our journey with our customers. I mean, some background to just how we think things have now have changed and will change further. And there's a lot of speculation in things that we're going to say and talk about today. We expect that the journeys that people will do in the future will be very different to what they've done in the past. And these are some examples, and I'm sure there are many, and there's probably many in the minds of people who are listening today. We've now become very accustomed to working from home. We in Hotelbeds have become largely flexible work at home organization over the last 9 months, like I'm sure many of those who are listening. It'll be interesting to see how that continues into the future. So an example would be Will people think about taking extended vacation where maybe for the last number of days or the last week, they may say it's now possible for me to work, albeit at another location. Maybe I'll even just take some vacation so to break up the monotony of working at home, because I know I can now work digitally. So these will be some interesting dynamics of the kind of choices and decisions that will occur into the future. Flexibility will be another area, and I'm sure Ash will comment on this from an airline perspective, where, last minute bookings, the need to maybe cancel, change, modify, what is your process around refunds? How will insurance work into the future for changes? But people will want that flexibility. I think we learned this year that staycations, staying at home, getting to know places closer to where you live, became obviously the only way of getting away and getting some break. But it may continue into the future where the patterns of travel may change, that when we talk about this recovery that we covered in the poll, we may find that the journeys that people are willing to undertake, at least for the foreseeable future, could be shorter in terms of duration or distance. They may be just saying, I'm willing to just travel within my own country or within a very small defined region, and things like long haul travel, holidays of a lifetime may get really pushed out into the future. Safety is a thing when we think about, and I think Robert mentioned this, when we were going through the summer, we were getting a significant number of calls to our support centers, not only in terms of where hotel bookings were changing because governments were imposing lockdowns or restrictions, so people were trying to change or cancel. But one of the common questions coming up, normally we get questions around, the pool or various amenities at a hotel, some clarification. Over the summer, the tone of those conversations changed to safety. So people are looking for the COVID regime, the COVID protocols, the hygiene scenarios at hotels. So questions that we then had to go reach out to our partners and figure out. And again, building on to something that Robert said again, nature is back. And what I mean by that is, again, we could see changes in behaviors where people are less inclined to go to cities and maybe looking for more open spaces in the countryside, maybe at beaches, but less crowded. Again, as a response to concerns around being in more crowded locations. And in an interesting way, some locations are finding this as a positive trend. So there are some resorts and cities around the world who now take a view that this is a segue to completely changing how they market and position themselves as a destination, because they were feeling that they were overcrowded, and they will look to change the nature of the visitor that they like to attract into their destination location. All of what I've just said there is highly speculative. We'll just have to see how all this changes going forward. But from a Hotelbeds point of view, we're having to spend a lot of time trying to preempt and understand the journey of the future. And the diagram on the screen is really just to try and give a graphic of how we're beginning to think about what these journeys in the future will be. What is it that a traveler will be looking for? What is it they're looking to achieve on their journey and the experience that they're looking for? And how can we understand that at its deepest level? And we'll talk a little bit in a few moments about data and the importance of that. But we're going to have to really get an understanding of what will these behaviors look like into the future. And one of the interesting observations or reflections that we have is that everything that we've learned in our 20, 30 years of existence may not be as relevant into the future as it would have been in the past, when we were trying to forecast the coming weeks, months, years, the next seasons, and so on and so forth, because the underpinning drivers of that activity may have dramatically and maybe forever shifted to something completely new and different. So we are going to have to make sure that we don't inadvertently just place reliance on what we've known from the past. We are going to certainly have to re-examine and remap the behaviors and patterns as we see them emerge into the future. And I do hope, going with the news that I think Kevin made at the start about vaccines, that this is the beginning of the end of the COVID experience, right? That's what I think we're all hoping for. But it'll take some time before we really get a sense of how everybody globally will begin to adapt. So our diagram on our screen is really to, again, put the customer at the center of the journey. I guess that's common for anybody who's in our industry. We will have to look at what is it they're looking to achieve in terms of what are their outcomes. We'll have to make sure that we're measuring that at various points to try and give them the best experience, and also to be very responsive to where it's not working or where we're still learning to what they're trying to achieve, because it'll take some time for us, I think, to get a proper sense of what this new journey and travel behavior will look like. And then on an iterative basis, making sure that we're continually recycling that learning back into our organization to say, how can we optimize these journeys? And then how can we propose new journeys to a traveler to sort of, again, make us, from a distribution point, the partner of choice for embarking on that journey. So we'll see a number of things happening. We'll have to reassess and relearn a lot of what we have probably taken for granted for many years. What we used to measure in the past may not be as relevant in the future, because things will shift and change. And we will have to be very agile to understanding what these new journeys into the future. Historically, we tended to look at things in terms of, do we have product available at a good pricing that meets the customer's needs? We'll have to look at that in probably a very more rich view into the future, and adding on adjunct services and providing a more complete experience going forward. And then, as we said, continually reinventing it and reiterating. So that then segues nicely to, I guess, my final point, if we can move to the next slide, please, which really talks about the idea of the data that we will need to aggregate and gather. And again, as an organization, we have accumulated over many years a lot of data about the journeys our clients would have undertaken historically. We now have to filter to figure out how much of that remains relevant to the future. We'll have to build new pipelines to understand the new patterns going into the future, and making sure we're facilitating and we're providing the experience that they need. It'll mean that we'll have to continually re-examine the insights that we're getting from this data. One of the things as we embarked upon, and we continue to embark upon, re-examining and revitalizing our whole digital approach. When it comes to a digital approach, we need to make sure that we're always focused on understanding the question we're trying to solve for the customer, for the traveler. There's a tendency, and we ourselves in Hotelbeds have to catch ourselves regularly on this, there's a tendency to focus in on the technologies without necessarily understanding what or how we're trying to deploy those things, those tools into solving a problem for a particular customer. So one catch item for us is to say, making sure we're catching the data of the journeys as we're going forward, but then making sure that we're understanding which question we need to answer and how to solve for that, and then converting that into actionable items where we're always looking at the omni-channel experience. And that could be everything from, we know that customers will want flexibility. Well, then how do we deal with that? What happens if a customer, if a hotel closes unexpectedly? How do we relocate them in a very, very efficient manner? So these are things that we will have to grapple with. I think the only certainty we have at the moment is uncertainty about how this will revolve. We certainly need to continually look at the journeys that are happening. We will need to make sure that we are, on the one hand, getting the digital insights from the patterns of travel, but on the other hand, finding ways to engage with our travelers and also our hotels and how they position themselves in the most efficient way that gives them the greatest opportunity to be successful in their business. So they were just simply some reflections. It's a very quick tour of just like our approach to looking at the customer journey of the future, and also then just looking at from a data gathering, an analytical, and an actioning point of view, how we're looking at different layers. But let me hand it over to Ash at this particular point to talk about the Virgin Atlantic experience.
Thank you, Dean. And thank you, Kevin and Robert, as well, for a great introduction. So my name's Ash Jokhoo. I look after the technology at Virgin Atlantic, and hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. I don't actually have any slides. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what we've experienced in this torrid year of COVID. And before I get into that, pre-COVID, our vision here at Virgin Atlantic was really to be the most loved travel company. And love has always been part of our service. Any of you that have flown with Virgin Atlantic or experienced our products know that we've always been a business for a force for good, and we've always tried to do the differential thing. And so the startup mentality of this organization 36 years ago, in 1984, is probably where we're going to have to go to the future and reimagine ourselves in this new world. So in 1984, this company started. And this year, as we went into 2020, this crisis has forced us to really focus on not only just cash, but the way that we do business and how we do business. And so one of the things that we are known for is that superior service, the superior service on board in our lounges. When you speak to one of our contact center agents, and all parts of our channel are really important. But I think most of our panelists have mentioned this today. The digital element has really become to the forefront. That, compounded by data, has really meant that we're going to have to think much more radically as we go into the next few years. But as we went into this year, many sacrifices have been made here at Virgin Atlantic, and not just but all of our peer groups as well. The pressure to focus on cash and cost has meant that 1 in 2 people have lost their roles here at Virgin Atlantic, so we're half the size that we used to be. But we've also taken this time to reimagine our future so that we can come out stronger next year and in the years ahead. And I thought the poll was really interesting in terms of when we might see pre-COVID levels or a full return. And I think in 2 to 3 years' time, I think most organisations in travel and hospitality are thinking that way. And we're hoping today, the Vaccine Day in the UK really starts the stem of that work. But working closely together with the government and other destinations is part of the puzzle. But now customers have experienced something that we've just touched on in terms of home working, in terms of using technology, and it's no longer now a yardstick to be measured against just to be the best in digital in travel and hospitality. But if we compare ourselves to retail more generally, there are things and expectations that our customers expect. They expect that you know who they are. They expect that you understand their habits, that you have understood exactly how they want to interact with you. They expect that you respect their data requests and you understand when to speak to them and when not to speak to them. And I think one of the things that we must do, not just at Virgin Atlantic, but as an industry, is really catch up with the rest of retail and other organisation sectors who have spent their time really honing customer engagement and digital end-to-end journeys. One of the other things that we've seen through this, one of the things we've really seen through this pandemic and crisis is that focus on processes. And automation is absolutely key, and it's no different here in the airline and also as part of our sector. We need to think much more about giving the efficiencies back to not only our customers but our employees, because they just expect to have end-to-end services that work in service of an outcome and in service of, and I couldn't agree with Dean more, not technology for technology's sake, but outcome-driven, service-orientated, customer-focused outcomes are the way that we need to focus all of our deliveries. Cash has been king for many organizations. And at the beginning of this pandemic, there was an influx of cancellations and modifications to bookings that were going out for this year and potentially next year. And so we spent a lot of time actually with WNS automating and looking at some of our manual processes that were never designed. And so we did let our customers down in terms of the timelines to refund activity, because our systems were never designed to do what they needed to in the quantity and the size and scale. We've had to accelerate and leap forward our thinking around automation and really spend time looking at those manual processes that are part of our end-to-end processes, and all organizations are struggling with this. At the same time, being sustainably profitable is also a link to the sustainability agenda. We have, last week was a very sad time, although it's with a double-edged sword. We said goodbye to our last 747 from our fleet, a twinned-engine aircraft that has served us beautifully for the last 36 years, but actually for the environment and its impact from carbon emissions, it is not the most efficient. And so as we move forward, we must start focusing on how we ensure that our new fleet and our travel and sustainability agenda is interlinked and interwoven into that end-to-end journey, so that customers understand the impact that they're making on the environment as they travel. Dean mentioned a really interesting point about being able to be nomadic where you work. And we are hoping to see more and more people embrace not only the technology they've found this year, and so some positives come out of this, so that your vacation is a little bit longer and you're able to stay in those lovely locations, but continue working. And we do think that that is absolutely a theme that will start to happen. For us here at Virgin Atlantic, we are always going to reimagine what we do. And so as we go into 21, we're thinking like a startup again. We're reimagining, reconnecting, and really driving our technology to support what customers are expecting. I think there's a number of years of work to do, not just here at Virgin Atlantic, but also in the entire sector. And I think as we start to do that together, technologists and industry experts can really, really start to raise the bar to where customers expect us to be. And so with that, I think I'll hand back to Kevin.
Okay, thanks, Ash, for your one, and also to Dean and to Robert, if you can all take yourselves off mute. We've got about 5 minutes or so here for some questions from the audience. If anyone has any additional questions, they can send them in. I've got lots here as well, so if we don't get a chance to get through all of them, we'll take a note of them and we'll pass them on to the gang here that you can see in front of you. Right, so I guess it's a fairly broad one, if we can, and we'll start with you, Robert, if I may. I mean, what do you sense is, in the travel industry now, that will never actually go back to normal in this new normal, as we're calling it now? So yeah, what do you sense we're not going to go back to doing, Robert? If we can get your perspective on that one first of all, please, sir.
Well, I think we've all three of us sort of touched on to a number of these things, and I think that the new normal is travelers will expect personalization, and they'll expect to have a travel experience which is tailored to them, and again they'll be pushing for direction, self-determination within the journey. So I think the assumption that we can have one size fits all and we can just sort of stack people up and expect them to respond accordingly, I think those days are gone. I think we're into a much more informed and enlightened engagement with travelers. So yeah, I mean, I think the one size fits all model, I think is probably a thing of the past, and a more enlightened and customized engagement as travelers move forward.
Dean, your perspective on that, and also there's an audience question to you specifically, if we can. I mean, how do you see your company's relationship changing, if at all, with hotels in the going forward from here?
I think I think the role we play between, on the one hand, the demand side through online travel agents and airlines, I think that'll continue. It can be quite complex to make all those connections. And we've spent whatever 30 years doing that. I think that'll continue. I think the last 9 months will indicate digital is here to stay. I think it's been the greatest world experiment we've had for such a long time, right? And I think weirdly enough, a lot of things that industries would have been cautious about experimenting with in terms of how digital you can go, I think this has been the great experiment to prove, yeah, the whole world could kind of nearly work at home, right? So I think that's one, shift. Attitudes will shift. I think our relationships will continue. The one thing we did throughout the crisis was we stayed connected, right? And that meant actually phone calls. We rang up hotel partners and said, how are things going? What are you seeing happening? And we began to strategize from a very early stage. How can we fuel growth, right? And I think that was critical, rather than just saying, okay, let's wait till all this is over, maintaining those connections. And I think that's the role that we would see ourselves continuing into the future. We don't believe that we compete directly with hotels who are doing their own thing and marketing their location through their own channels. We think we can complement that, but we think we can be a partner that brings that insight. You remember I had all this conversation about understanding the journeys. I think we can bring that into the conversation. I think we can help hotels grow their business. I think we can help our travel agents, with their reach and the richness of the offering. It's all there. I think it's a question, though, of making sure we don't assume we can still repeat the past and get away with it, because I think that's not going to happen.
Okay, and Ash, I'm curious, because there is this sense that things are happening at the last minute. So people are deciding, a particular country opens up for a short period or something like that. I mean, what has that done to the dynamics of an organization that, whether it's hedging or just networking just months or even a year in advance? I mean, what has that done to you as an operation, as an airline, where you've had to kind of cater for this, people deciding to travel at the last minute?
Well, there's two sides to that, I think, Kevin. The first is America remains closed for us, and the trick is in the name, Virgin Atlantic. So we've not been able to fly to the States. So we've had to do two things. One, we've had to pivot. Actually, I don't like that word, pivot. But anyway, we've had to move very quickly. It's one of those buzzwords, isn't it? But the reality is we've had to move really quickly and use our size and scale to open up to new destinations. So we opened up to new areas in the Caribbean we've never flown to before. We've opened up Pakistan. We increased our cargo flying. We're doing more cargo sectors than we've ever done to various parts of the world, flying fish, PPE, vaccine, all sorts of things around the world. And that agility has meant that we've had to really, really move fast as an organization. So that's what I mean when we go back to our startup capability. And that's allowed us to, in many, many situations, be much faster than our competitors. On the customer side, in terms of last minute bookings, I think customers have been much more cautious in the first half of the year. But if anything, if I use the Black Friday sale and our quite revolutionary product, our escape pass, where you just told us where you wanted to go roughly in the Caribbean, and we picked the flight, we picked the hotel, and you just basically leave the rest to us. Many customers took that opportunity to just go with that product. And I think so travel and hospitality we have to think differently now about the risks that people are willing to take. And whilst I love technology, and it has proven, and Dean, I agree with you completely, we have proven we can do it. Whether or not we should is a slightly different thing. There are some things I think require human contact, and just visiting friends and family around the world, that level of reunion, of that human contact, I think will always be there in our society and culturally. But for work, no doubt, video conferencing has its place. But even for work, I think there's more that we can do to provide other options. As your idea, Dean, was, I think, spot on. Working from Barbados is actually a aim of mine.
I'm actually in Barbados as we speak. It just doesn't look like there's a beach behind me. Robert, a follow-up question from the audience here. Someone wants to know, why would travelers expect more personalization in a kind of post-pandemic world? you know, there was already a growing trend of more personalization pre-COVID, but why and how could COVID catalyze that? That's from the
Well,
audience.
I mean, I think picking up on what Ash was talking about there, the human touch, the need for contact and assurance amongst all the digital, you know, the digital tools and channels is something that it's been forced upon people, and for quite a lot of people, it's actually new, you know, in terms of its extent. So I think that I would pick up that aspect of it. The digitization was happening. People using social media was obviously happening, but the way and their expectations of how they're going to be interacting with travel service providers, you know, for the whole journey, that I think has moved. And I think the need for assurances about safety and you know, security and flexibility if plans have to change quickly, those are things where people want more of a contact. They want, you know, they want to feel secure through the digitization,
Right.
but it's a human touch. And so it's that sort of surround. And this is why we've been looking at these new solutions that kind of build out a way to interact and engage with customers and travelers, which gives them that comfort, which doesn't discard the human touch, but makes it easy to deliver, you know, to an acceptable standard and time through technology.
Okay. Unfortunately, we've gone a little bit over our allotted time today, so we can't get through any more questions. As I said, we have taken a note of all of them. We'll pass them on to our respective panel members, and either they or one of their team will get back to you. There's various questions about all sorts of things, ranging from refunds to COVID vaccinations and things like that. So sorry that we can't get to those right now. Two comments that have come in. So thank you very much for all the webinars. So you're welcome. And someone has asked if this is a COVID beard at my end. It's not. I just grow one once a year, and I haven't got rid of it this year. So thank you very much for asking, whoever that anonymous attendee was. So no, more serious notes. You can get in touch with WNS at wns.com, and really only goes for me to say thank you very much from Dean to Dean from Hotelbeds, to Ash from Virgin Atlantic. I'm assuming you're going to get back in the simulator there behind you and whiz off to the Caribbean on one of your new routes. And last but no means least, Robert, thank you very much, and especially to WNS Global Services for working with us on this webinar. As always, thank you very much to everybody for tuning in. You'll get a replay sent to you either later today or tomorrow. We always appreciate your attendance, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much, everybody, and cheerio.
Thank you.